My name is Gary Scobie. I am a Ward 3 resident and your MC for this evening. Your interest in the issues and challenges of today affects the Burlington of the future. Your vote matters. All the candidates running in Ward 3 have agreed to participate in this evening's event. We welcome you all. Your presence and willingness to discuss important issues that impact our city speaks volumes, and it also honors all of the residents of Ward 3. The format this evening is as follows. Session 1, pre-selected questions which were generated from social media, print, and the candidates themselves. Session 2, written questions from the audience. Candidates have drawn for the sequence in which they will speak and also the seating position on the panel. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to answer the question. The timekeeper will ensure that the time limits are strictly adhered to. Both a 1 minute and a 30-second remaining sign will be provided to the candidates as they approach the 3-minute limit. All questions will be asked through the moderator. Our moderator this evening is Mr. Mark Carr. Mark is a longtime resident of Burlington and has volunteered in many areas of this community. Mark is Executive Director for a not-for-profit agency and has been involved with public affairs throughout his programs, The Issue and Roundtable on Your TV for 20 years. He has been campaign manager for 4 successful provincial and federal elections and is a former member of Burlington City Council. Mark has moderated debates for several years, including provincial and municipal debates, and this year will moderate 5 of our ward meetings, and also the Milton Chamber of Commerce ward debates. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Mark Carr.
Thank you, Gary. I did want to mention to the audience that when someone decides to be a candidate in any election, this decision is not taken lightly. Cost, time, personal and family sacrifice are all taken into account. I applaud everyone up here and everyone that runs for office, and all of these candidates have made those sacrifices. So please join me in applause welcoming the candidates. I'd also like to remind the audience, although I haven't had to impose this yet, that any booing, yelling, comments, or disruption of any kind will not be tolerated. Please hold your applause until the candidate has finished their comments, because applause will be taken into account for the candidate's time. We want a respectful discourse tonight. So, that being said, I threw in one extra little rule here tonight, and all the candidates have agreed to it. If a candidate makes a direct or indirect statement regarding another candidate, the mentioned candidate will be allowed 30 seconds to respond. So, with that being said, we'll get to the 2-minute opening remarks, and we'll start with Peter.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much, Gary and Mark and the ECO group for setting this up tonight. I'm very humbled to be here. say, and I've only got a minute 50 to talk the intro through, so I'm going to speak really quickly, and I apologize for that, but I want to cover a lot. I believe that with my help, the governance at City Hall will be more effective. I bring 30 years of experience in a wide range of infrastructure development, land use planning, a lot of private sector, public sector work. I chaired land compensation dispute hearings at the board negotiation, which was an arm of the OMB previously, which is LPAD now. I've dealt with many high-density development projects, including work on the land site that now is accommodating the highest building in Canada, One Bloor West. I'm also currently involved in a project downtown Burlington. It hasn't had any profile yet, but I'm sort of in that field to a certain degree. The work I've accomplished in Ward 3 in the City of Burlington, I was a previous member of the Committee of Adjustment at City Hall. I acquired all the lands at 407 north of Dundas Street, and then I got retained by the province to resolve all the outstanding claims issues at the OMB. I dealt directly with the Parkway Belt Planning, Niagara Escarpment Plan, the City of Burlington Official Plan. I appraised Mount Nemo for tax purposes one time. I did a deal with the developer of the Burlington Bluffs, together with the city for a woodlot. Prescriptive rights claims at Britannia Road. I was behind the deal for the waterfront that took a lot of hit a lot of press a few years ago, and I acquired lands for the Burloak Drive grade separation and a whole bunch of other projects. But I'm running out of time, so maybe we'll talk afterwards. Thank you very much,
Peter. And I'm going to cut you off even in mid-sentence if anybody goes over there a lot of time. Gareth.
All right, thank you, Mark. Thank you very much for serving as moderator tonight, and for ECOB for organizing this event. And most of all, thank you to all of you for attending, and my fellow candidates on stage with me. I look forward to hearing from all of them. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Gareth Williams, and I've lived in Ward 3 for the past 16 years with my wife, Sandy, first in Mountainside and now in Brant Hills. I've worked locally in information technology for employers in the public sector, small business, and large enterprise. Like many of you, we've chosen to live here because of how convenient it is for commuters like ourselves. We've stayed here in the community due to its unique location and friendly atmosphere. Ward 3 offers all we need to live comfortably and happily, a sentiment I hear from many voters at the door. I decided several years ago to give back to Ward 3 in the best way that I could, by getting involved locally. And for over 10 years, I've been working alongside my friends and neighbors to make Burlington a greener and safer and more affordable city. Whether I was cleaning up a local community park or working directly with councillors and staff as chair of the city's Sustainable Development Committee, I committed myself to efforts that would benefit everyone in the community. It was through this hard work that I learned about the unique issues and concerns for Ward 3, and it's why I'm on this stage today. I believe our next councillor must be someone who has shown they'll put in the effort to better our city. The residents of Kilbride and Lowville need Ward 3's councillor on their side when faced with the threat of a highway corridor through the escarpment. They won't settle for less. Nor will parents in Brant Hills or Mountainside who want to keep their streets safe but are frustrated by inflexible rules and slow complaints process. I hope tonight we can discuss these issues and more, and I can demonstrate how I will work for your family as Ward 3's next councillor. Thank you.
Lisa.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank you for coming out. It's a good turnout, very happy to see that. I also would like to thank the ECOB for staging these events across the city, something we've never seen before in Burlington to this extent. Good to see. As before, I do not accept donations. I do this all on my own, out of my own pocket, because I have the passion and the fire. I love my ward, I love my city. I believe Mark Carr, our moderator, stated it quite succinctly at a meeting earlier this year. To put your name forth, you need to have that passion and fire. You need to have it within yourself, because it is a grueling period for the election. You are out there knocking on doors. You take a lot of rejection. You put a lot of miles on your feet, but it is worth it. And even just to meet the people that I have, is worth it. Ward 3 will be facing a lot of issues, a lot that has to do with a lot of Burlington, and that's intensification. While development cannot be stopped, an effective official plan must be developed. We can't have it, if we don't have a plan and we don't follow it, what's the point of having the plan at all? And that seems to be what has been happening. With a regional budget being approved at approximately $400 million, which includes the police budget of $150 million, the region has a policy of a no increase past the rate of inflation. That does not include the Burlington. Burlington is going to raise its tax rate to 4.3%. The city's gross budget is approximately $250 million for the operating and capital budgets combined. In closing, I am a mother, wife, former business owner and operator, and a lifelong resident of Ward 3. I understand many of the issues for Ward 3 and the city. Where I don't know your answer, I will tell you. I will get it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Darcy.
Thank you, Mark. First of all, I want to thank you all for taking time away from your busy schedules to attend this event tonight. It's a fantastic turnout, and I think it's important that what you come away with here is a sense that you have a number of people here who are very passionate about the city, and I think that bodes well for our future. I've been knocking on doors in our ward for the last several months. What's been clear from speaking with many of you is that there's a general sense of frustration, perhaps some cases of resignation, to how ineffective our city has been in addressing some of the issues that are important to you and your family. My wife Jennifer and I have been raising our young children in Brant Hills for over a decade now. As your neighbor and as a parent, living with you in Ward 3 all these years, I can very much relate to the challenges that you face in trying to raise your family in this community. I'm here to tell you tonight that help is on the way. I'm running to be your next city councilor because I can relate to your experiences, but I also have the ability and desire to work with you to address and resolve your concerns. If elected, I'll bring significant, relevant senior business management experience to the table. Over the last 25 years working in finance, IT, operations, business development, pretty much you name it, I've done it. I've built a reputation for bringing people together to solve difficult problems. Not only solve them, but put those plans into action. So I commit to work with you to ensure that we take a mature, responsible, and balanced approach to addressing your priorities, and I'm committed to you that you will not only be informed, but you'll be involved in every step of the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Darcy. Rory.
Thank you, Mark. I'd like to start by noting that I'm too short to see the time here, so I can see the colors, so I'll be all right. Don't worry, Steve. Listen, thank you, ECOB, and thank you to my fellow candidates here tonight. As it's been said, it takes a lot of courage to step forward and put yourself on the line, so good on you guys. And thanks everyone who came out this evening. If you're here because you care about our community. And I bet that you are sick and tired of the negativity that we are bombarded with in our politics these days. What I want you to know is I'm laser focused on our community and how we can build an even better city for the years to come. There are many issues to discuss, and we'll get into them, but one in particular that really matters to me is it's the future of Burlington. There's two competing visions for what Burlington's going to be. One vision is a city that keeps getting bigger, with the only limit being how fast the developers can get their applications in and how fast City Council can approve them. The result's going to be like a Mississauga West with many high-rises downtown, no more character buildings on Brant Street, and a claustrophobic streetscape. Not to mention the traffic and the parking. The other vision balances the need to grow with the need to protect our city's best assets. That means focusing big growth away from the downtown and away from residential areas. The result, a vibrant city with an amazing downtown for people to go to and have fun. In other words, a city for everyone. That's what I want for Ward 3 residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Rory. For full disclosure, I feel I should mention I do have a relative that works at the regional hall. So just to get that right out of the way. Let's get to the first question. And this is in part 1, and all of the candidates will have an opportunity to answer all of these questions. So, what would you like to see council do less of? And what would you like to see council do more of? And we'll start with Peter.
I'd like to see council do less of fighting and causing sort of misleading information to be spread about the community and scaring people about development and this whole vision of Burlington. I'd really like to see council work in a more collaborative and a professional and competent manner. And that's one of the reasons why I think that somebody with my skill set, with all the issues that are out there right now, I could bring in some manner of expertise and share it and you know, be used to guide some of this. The official plan, it's 8 years due. It should have been dealt with a long time ago. Other municipalities in the region and in the GTA have been well advanced in their official plan review and implementation. So I think instead of looking back, I think at the mistakes that have been made, we move forward, but I think we move forward with a little bit more clarity. There's some idea that there's going to be 30 towers built downtown. I don't think that anybody's been able to demonstrate where those 30 towers are going to be. There's the issue of servicing and capacity, timing. If you look at the Martha and Lakeshore Road corner property, a mistake that here's another mistake that the city made about 4 or 5 years ago on the Addy development. They took them to the OMB. It should not have gone to the OMB. We just wasted money and time and aggravation and got everybody upset. There's no reason to get upset. In that situation, the city should have acted proactively, became a partner. Perhaps a strategic acquisition in that little development at the corner could have leveraged the development, could have established a more professional relationship with a developer who's really new to the scene. They're not really a high-grade development group. So the adverse relationships that were caused by what I would consider innocent mismanagement, everybody tries their best, but I think that they could do better. We could do a lot better. So and here's, I want to talk more about the OP. There's a movement, I sense that there's going to be an appeal made or a lobby for an appeal made by the city to go to LPAT against the current OP. I think it's a big mistake because there's property owners and developers lining up to do the same on the reverse. They're going to claim that they're not getting as high a density as they should, and the two will offset each other, and we may be stuck with an LPAT decision to get even a higher density downtown. So people have to be very, very careful about the messaging coming from council.
Thank you very much, Peter. Okay. I'd also like to remind the candidates that it isn't necessary for you to go the full 3 minutes if you don't want to. That's the maximum time that everyone has, but you don't have to use all of it. The less time that you take answering, the more questions I can get done. So, okay. All right, Gareth.
Okay, I think I can be succinct. I actually really thought Peter had a good point there about the bickering at council. I've been to a lot of council meetings over the last several years. I'm a pretty regular face at the council chambers. And I've noticed it, it's hard not to notice it even if you watch it on the webcast. Sometimes you get these personal disagreements between members of council, and I've just never found that it benefited anybody. It just delayed the proceedings and things got wrapped up in those arguments. And so I think the council, if we do away with that and try to work more collaboratively together, we'll be better off. We can focus on the city's and residents' priorities. And I think the other thing I would say the city needs to do more of is focus particularly on the projects or the essentials, the things that we need to keep our city moving: transportation, transit, snow clearing, and less on the projects, big projects that benefit relatively few people in the community and are sort of boutique projects. We need to concentrate on the essentials is my take. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Gareth. Lisa, what would you like to see council do less of, and what would you like to see council do more of?
Well, I think council needs to do less of rushing. We're rushing our decisions for development. We have already made our 2030 mandate for the development. Why are we rushing to pass all of these developers, giving them what they want? So we need to slow down and take a break. We need more transparency. No in-camera meetings, making decisions where the residents don't know what the outcome was or why the outcome came that way. There was, Brock is one of the examples of an in-camera meeting where it was sold and there was no explanation as to what the deal actually was. So that, and less attitude for the residents when they're presenting at council. Past, when you see residents that are actually taking the time to present their side of what they believe in, and council is clearly not listening or being a bad attitude back to them. So that's what.
Thank you, Lisa. Darcy.
I think we need to spend less of your tax dollars on priorities other than your own, and more time listening and connecting with people in our community. I'll expand a little. We've had a number of instances over the last 4 years where we have been allocating money to projects that have delivered, I'd say, less than what we would have expected. I think a great example was the New Street bike lane project. I think anybody who probably wasn't part of council, and I know some who were on council, saw that that was going to be a problem right from the get-go. That's over $200,000 that could have been allocated towards a vast array of a number of projects that residents have been telling me when I come to their doors were far more important. So we need to get some control of that. And as far as listening and connecting with people in our community, let's look at over-intensification downtown. I think that it's fair to say that if we had taken the time to properly consult, to listen, and to incorporate what your concerns were at the beginning of the process, we could have headed off all the pain that we felt at the end of the process. And I think this really comes down to a culture change that's required at City Hall. I think it's important that your voice is heard and respected on all the decisions that council makes. And I will absolutely commit to you going forward that if elected as your councillor, that I will listen, respect, and include you in every conversation around every important issue that's involved in the city so that you're not blindsided going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Darcy. Rory.
Thank you, Mark. It's not easy going last, and tend to agree with much of what you've heard. Yes, you know, I was there as well, seeing how City Council was not listening. I engaged in those projects from early on. I remember the tall building guidelines. We all went to those meetings with the best of intentions. Were we heard? Were they listening? I mean, consultations happened, but it wasn't real consultation. There was no feeling that what we were asking for or what we were even suggesting was being taken into account. And then when the rubber hit the road and it was time for delegations, the way that delegates were treated by several councillors, not all, several councillors, was truly unacceptable. Not good for local democracy, and people lost faith in the process. And then what happened was people started to abandon the process, and then we had councillors saying, "Oh, people don't even care." Well, I think that's wrong and not true. So that kind of negativity is something we need to get away from. Something that council needs more of is dealing with the traffic that we're having in our region and in our city. We've all seen it get worse and worse, and all this talk about intensification and growth, and that debate is so important, but also our day-to-day lives are affected by traffic. When it takes my partner an hour and 20 minutes to get back from Brampton, dinner's cold. That has an impact on people's lives. People really care about that. So what can we do about the traffic? What can we have more of? Building out our intersections and adding lanes where possible. Investing in smart intersections. How about public transit that actually works for people? It's time, it's 2018. Let's have public transit that reflects the 21st century in Burlington. And then we'll have a plan B. When the traffic's bad, you have another way to get around. It doesn't work right now. A friend of mine, she lives up on Pear Tree Lane, Brant, north of Upper Middle. It takes her 45 minutes to go to C.H. Norton. That's an 8-minute drive or less. That shouldn't be happening. She shouldn't have to get up at 5 a.m. just to get to work. So that's something we need more of. Thank you.
Thank you, Quarry. Okay, second question, and we'll pose the second question to Gareth first, and then proceed like that. The cornerstone for any municipality is its official plan. Burlington has passed the plan and sent it to Halton Region for approval. If you are elected, what specifically in the official plan would you like to see changed?
Okay, thanks for the question, Mark. So I've been involved in the development of the new official plan as a member of one of the city's Sustainable Development Committee from the very early stages. Actually, before it was even considered to be a new official plan, it was originally going to be a rewrite of the old official plan. So the process to write a new official plan is something that the city engaged with its advisory committees, and there were a number of public meetings held over the course of those intervening years to get feedback from the public on it. So I can say that I'm pretty familiar with the development process of that plan. I think the main advantage of the new official plan is that it gives the city control over development in a way we did not previously have with the old official plan that is over 20 years old but updated at various times. To answer the question, I think the piece that we're missing is pretty obvious. It was part of the discussions at council over the last several months, is the transportation plan, and I'm making it a priority as your councillor to move that forward very quickly. I want to see the transportation plan completed and work for residents to make our transit system work effectively and reduce cost and make sure that all residents are served by it. I think the other piece I'd like to see improved upon is, I think the new official plan improves greatly on agricultural policies for the rural part of our ward. As it moves into the regional process, updating a region official plan, I believe the region official plan needs to catch up and implement some of the same changes to make agriculture for our farmers workable and viable for them. So those are the two big things that I would like to change as we move forward.
Thank you. Lisa, if you're elected, what specifically would you change in the official plan?
Well, right now, Burlington City Council has voted for the new official plan. It is waiting on regional, which I believe is going to be November to be finalized. I believe that we should reopen the new official plan for one reason, to look at it and close the loopholes that the developers are using against us in LPAT. Oakville has a fabulous official plan and they usually win against developers. We are not. We don't have a very good record of winning against them. So we don't want to be put in a position that they can even go to LPAT. That is my biggest thing, that I think we should sit down, take a breath, and reopen it, make sure the loopholes are closed. And once we have an official plan, we need the councillors to stick to it. No amendments for one certain developer and not give it to another, because the other developer is going to use it against us. We stick to official plan that we all agree on. No amendments.
Thank you, Lisa. Darcy?
I think when it comes to the official plan, I would do two things. I would immediately lobby the provincial government to have the Urban Growth Center designation removed from downtown. To me, that was a mistake. Oakville managed to get that done. Why we didn't is beyond me, quite frankly. I think we have a number of those areas already designated along our GO transit lines, and they're going to be able to deliver plenty enough population to our city in an area where it can best support it. So to me, that is an overriding concern. And I would also, echoing Lisa's comments, you know, our city vigorously enforces parking bylaws, the length of grass on your lawn, the height of your fence. But when it comes to intensification and development downtown, suddenly it's bylaw schmylaw, all right? We need to give people confidence that when they buy a house in a particular neighborhood, being fully aware of the existing zoning bylaws, that council at least is going to make more than a token effort to defend them. And that is something that going forward, if elected, I will absolutely, every time, stand up for residents of this city and make sure that those bylaws are vigorously defended. Thank you.
Thank you, Darcy. Rory?
Right on. I agree with a lot of what's been said by the previous two colleagues. The thing is, and I'll talk about the official plan more in a second, but if the official plan that's on the books is being ignored, and if city councillors are already looking at an unapproved official plan, as they did when they were looking at the 17/18 story building on top of Kelly's Bake Shop, they said, oh, that's going to meet the official plan. It's not even on the books yet. So we've undermined official plans by agreeing to high-rises that are 23 stories when it's designated for 8 or 10. So the new official plan matters, but what also matters is all the special planning zones that they're putting in. Watch out for the Waterfront Hotel. They want 2 towers down there. Consultation has already begun, if you didn't know. So problem number one is these official plans that aren't being followed, absolutely. Definitely, I think we need to get rid of that mobility hub designation, urban growth designation out of the downtown and focus our growth around the GO stations. And keep in mind what's already been said, which is that we're well on track to meet our growth targets. So there's no rush. We're putting the cart before the horse by approving all of these high-rises without a transportation plan. Because that's the worst case scenario, is constant gridlock in Burlington, and that's got to be what we look at constantly as something we need to avoid. I don't think the current OP provides enough protection for our residential areas as well. You may have seen the Lakeside Plaza development that's proposed at this point. It's not been approved, but we're seeing them pop up in Ward 6, seeing them pop up in Ward 5, seeing it in Ward 1, going above and beyond the official plan that's on the books. And it can happen in Ward 3 too. Absolutely it can. All it takes is for a developer who's willing to try. So that's what I want to change in the official plan.
Thank you, Rory. Peter.
So I've been dealing with official plans and development and urban expansion, boundary areas all across the GTA. And what I'm witnessing here today is another reason why I want to be at council. You're witnessing people who are reacting to something that should not be reacting to. The council has fallen asleep at the switch for the past 8 to 12 years. Those mobility hubs and intensification corridors and the areas identified for intensification have been around for 20 years. Problem was nobody ever knew how to handle or manage it. And then at the last minute, what my colleagues up here are classifying as last minute sort of non-consultative respect is it's too late. What you've got is you have to go, you have to approve DOP, rubber stamp it at Halton Region, and stand by it to defend the LPAT appeals that are coming by the owners and the developers. What I mean by that is along the corridor from Lakeshore to Prospect or Fairview, there's smaller areas where there's 25-story permitted density heights. They're not guaranteed either because there's no servicing guarantees, capacity. There's a whole bunch of issues. I've got a development pre-consult report from the city of Burlington on the site I'm working on. We can't get 25 stories, so it's an illusion out there. So it's how you manage that OP. And what I'm scared of is if there's a 10% chance of somebody at City Hall that gets a footing and goes and lobbies the government, goes to LPAT, which is untested. I've got a couple cases heading to LPAT. We haven't got one yet. The only LPAT case that's coming is the one that's on the southeast corner of Brant and James, right across from City Hall, that that Rory mentioned on the one of these people mentioned about the 17-story they're going to for 23. There's a bunch of issues. It's the one above Kelly's cupcakes. Anyways, a specific question. So the biggest one that I would have gotten rid of, Gary, is the mobility hub in the downtown core. But I think that train's, that's gone. So what we have to do is figure out a good way to use that. It should be a modified mobility hub is what it should be downtown. You can't get rid of it because it's over. But if we can manage it and strategically dive into development and JV with the developer or leverage the developer, I think that's how we approach it. There's another thing that's specific to Ward 3. I don't know if anybody knows. Maybe I'm wrong. Branch Street from QEW to Dundas, Guelph line from QEW to Dundas, 4 lanes to 6. That's going to be a bigger impact on this city than that downtown issue.
Thank you, Peter. You hit the time right on. No, you hit the time right on. That's completely acceptable. Okay, this is for, and we'll let Lisa answer this first and then go in succession. Halton must grow to a population of 1 million by 2041, more than doubling its population since 2008, to meet the expectations of the provincial growth plan. Traffic gridlock will continue to cause difficulties moving people and goods. What specifically can you accomplish in eliminating or easing gridlock in Burlington? Lisa?
First of all, like I said before, we're already ahead of our numbers for places to grow. We're ahead by the year 2030. So right now we need to stop the development and start working on our infrastructure and traffic, also transportation. I've had to put a few ideas for transportation. We have empty buses on all routes. Have we tried smaller buses? I mean, you see a bus go by, there is nobody on these buses. Whistle stops, lower cash fares, easier access to Presto cards, coordinate with local business to get discounts for people that show their Presto cards at the mall, get people on the bus rather than in their cars. The other problem is right now is the development that we do have downtown. We are not prepared for the traffic that is already there. We have 200 and I believe 50 units going in beside Brant Street, below Havendale, with one street coming out of it with no red light. This is going to be towards families. I know it's not in our ward, but the kids are going to be going across that busy street in our ward to the school there. Where are we going to do the traffic? We haven't taken the traffic into consideration when we've been giving these okays to all this development that's coming through. So if we are on task for 2030, let's take a break. We need to figure out our transportation for what we are going to do. The other thing is, why has no one suggested that we actually sit down with the province and say, these numbers, they're not feasible for Burlington. Can we not work something else out? And we need a better study, and we need help from the province with the QEW to widen the lanes there, make it more. It's very confusing when you get to Brant Street. This is where you see the slowdown. And people are cutting off of Brant Street and going through our neighborhood speeding. This is not going to help us. We need to have coordination with the province for the QEW to keep the people on the QEW. The other thing is these condos that we're going for, I have not heard one person say in City Hall about how they're going to accommodate the traffic coming out of them. We have, I don't know, in Ward 3 alone, we have St. Stephen's being sold. They've already had one developer suggesting 4 townhouses and 8 semi-detached in front. Right across from St. Gabriel's School. No traffic study done. Now that has fallen through, but they're already in talks with another developer. No
Thank you,
study.
Lisa. Darcy.
Obviously, the single biggest challenge of adding that many people to our existing population in Halton will be its impact on our infrastructure. Specifically transportation, so our roads, but also our transit infrastructure. We need to make sure that we are spending appropriately now, if in fact we do intend to have 1 million people by 2041. I am of the opinion that we would have a government right now that is very favorable to renegotiating the Places to Grow Act. I think that's something, an avenue our city should pursue to see if we can slow down some of the development that we have right now, and so that we are not having to front-end load a huge whack of infrastructure costs onto our existing tax base, and then we'll be able to spread that out a little bit better over time. We also have to understand that it's not just roads, but it's also our water and wastewater management that will have to expand significantly. I know in talking with a number of people across our ward, especially those in the rural area, there are some real challenges about water coming through their communities and being used for other purposes in urban areas. And the concern is if we don't manage that resource properly, that it's not going to be as plentiful and available as it is today. So we need to really, really appreciate that having that many people come to our community in a short period of time is going to pose a significant amount of cost. So we need to be on top of that straight away. Thank you.
Thank you, Darcy. Rory, what specifically can you accomplish in eliminating or easing gridlock in Burlington?
Thank you, Mark. I have to say, I don't think we're going to eliminate it. I don't think it's going to get better, unfortunately. We do have to do everything we can. By the way, before I'll talk quickly about traffic and public transit, but I just want to say I'm a little worried about renegotiating with the provincial government at this point. We've heard some interest in opening up the green belt. That concerns me, and I'd rather be a little more low profile right now and stay off the radar there, but there you are. Listen, as far as traffic goes, building out the intersections, adding the lanes, the smart intersections, synchronizing the lights, and then being very careful about where we put this growth in our city, and making sure we get this transportation plan right before we start approving new builds. The downtown was built for, or downtown Branch Street, that was built for horse and buggy. That wasn't built to be at the intersection of all these highways and for the high rises and to be an urban growth center. That's not what it was meant for. So we need to be very careful about how we grow down there, or else people in Ward 3 are not going to be able to get downtown to enjoy all of the things that are down there that we spent money to make nice in the first place. We built that downtown with our tax dollars. We should be able to get down there in under half an hour. And it'd be nice to have a bus that goes straight down Branch Street as well. As far as public transit goes, it's too slow. Connections are too long. Buses are empty. Routes are circuitous. Buses are late. Let's get the public transit up to a point where people actually want to use it. I want to see it take 30 to 35 minutes to get across the city. Not what it takes now, which can be an hour and a half at times. So let's put buses on our major routes, express buses, so you can get up and down and across the city. I want people to use it to commute to the east end of Burlington. I want them to use it to commute to Oakville. Another idea that has been bandied about is regionalizing our transit system in Halton to help us deal with the 1 million people who are going to come in. I think that may be a necessity. It deserves closer look, for sure. I think if we invest appropriately in this traffic management and in public transit, the local businesses are going to do better. People will have a higher quality of life, and that's what City Council should be focused on. Thank you.
Thank you, Rory. Peter.
Thanks, Mark. I think your brother's still the chair, right, of the region? Right?
Didn't I declare that right off the top?
So anyways, just a little bit more background on me. I do the infrastructure work. I get involved with like the new Burnham-Thorpe extension, other parts of the region other than just the city of Burlington. Spears Road widenings, grade separation projects. I was involved with the sanitary trunk that services all of North, or part of North Oakville, and they snaked it down through to the lakeshore and that kind of thing. So just a little bit of background. Somebody mentioned the provincial policy change with the Greenbelt. So just a couple points on that. I represented somebody out in Durham region. We went to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs just before the 10-year review of the Greenbelt plan, and we said, look, there's an arbitrary boundary set, and on one side of the road's Greenbelt, fully serviced area, and on the other side it's all fully developed. We'll make you a deal. We'll take 10 acres out of the Greenbelt, and we'll give you 100 where the Greenbelt should be expanded. The ministry didn't know what to do with it. They said, you know what, just call us back in 5 years or something like that. So that's not going to happen. Anyways, gridlock in Burlington. I would say continue doing what the city's doing. They're doing intersection improvements. They're putting in right turn lanes, taking up center medians. So they're letting the stacking be relieved so you can turn instead of waiting. I agree I would lobby for the reduction of all speed limits down by 10 kilometers an hour. I see neighborhoods in Toronto, East Toronto, where there's 30-kilometer neighborhoods, nice speed bumps, not the ugly ones we have in Ward 3. And you can make life a lot easier, more pleasant for people. Roundabouts, they're going in Milton. They should be introduced in other intersections here. You save money, time, as long as traffic's flowing. Sync traffic signals. I don't know what council's been doing for 8 years. Everybody talks about it every election. Oh, we're going to sync. Well, are they? I don't know. So let's do that. And you can't get people out of their cars. You're not going to get me out of my car. I'm not going to get you out of your car. So we have to figure out the whole mitigation issues, just like I'm outlining. And I suggest free transit, 24/7. 24/7. We're paying for empty buses anyways. Get the people out. Change behavior that way. You're not going to change anybody's behavior by lobbying, oh, you got to go try to use a bicycle on the suicide lanes that we have in this city. It's all erratic. That has to be changed. It's a problem. But I think we're doing okay. But I think just simple things will go miles. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Gareth.
All right, so I believe the question was in relation to congestion. I know that people have varied off from that a little bit, but I do hear a lot about this from voters at the door. This is a very serious issue that it affects not only Ward 3 voters and residents, but the entire city. I make a point of meeting with staff regularly through my involvement at the city, and I ask questions about this type of thing. And one of the things I've learned through meeting with staff is that they're already underway developing, or implementing rather, a synchronized traffic light system here in the city. It's already in testing in a few key intersections. So I think it's one of those things that if it was easy, it would already be done. So it doesn't, we obviously need to keep our eye on the ball and move it forward. But let's let staff do their work, and council can oversee it and make sure that it's happening in a timely fashion. So I'll push that through. The other real issue that we have here in Burlington, and it's kind of been touched on, is that we're at the nexus of several highways, and we have a significant amount of traffic, especially at rush hour, that is cut through traffic, essentially people getting off the highway and going across local streets. In fact, it's over 30% of rush hour traffic currently. That's not just a guess, that's actually, there's traffic technology that the city has that they're measuring how much traffic. It can measure it's actually based on the Bluetooth signature of the vehicles, because most vehicles have that technology now, and we know that's what's happening. So obviously we need to keep up conversation with the province to make sure that they're keeping up with the demand for regional transit system, getting people moving. There's a lot of building happening out in Stony Creek, Grimsby, beyond. So that's where we're seeing the real pressure for traffic, I believe, is that traffic just trying to avoid the backups and backlogs on the QEW. Using our local streets is cut through. I don't subscribe to the fact that it's because of development here in the city. Our development is currently down to half of what it was in 2001 to 2006. It was 1.86% in that period, and it's 0.86% in 2011 to 2016. So growth in the city is not what's causing it. It's the cut-through traffic, I believe, is the biggest problem that we need to address. And other people have mentioned the transit system. I'm a big supporter of that. We don't have room for expanding our roads. I'm sorry, it's a nice idea, but we need to move to a transit system that reduces costs to us as taxpayers by implementing autonomous and electric vehicles, which will cost less in fuel. So I think that's where the future is going. We can market the system better. We have reduced fares to GO station right now. Most voters I speak to have no idea that that even exists, that you can take a bus to GO for about a quarter of the normal fare. So, thank you.
Thank you, Gareth. Let's move now to the second section, where these are questions from the audience. Okay? And the responses are 2 minutes. So we'll start with Darcy. 2121 Brant Street, the Havendale project. Can you give us your opinions on it?
It is presently pretty much the only development that, that would really affect our ward in any real way. What's interesting when you look at the discussion on that particular project is that it's not really much different than some of the other discussions we've had in the rest of the city. When we talk about the concerns about over-intensification of a small area, we're concerned about the actual traffic flows that are going to affect people in an area where there are lots of children. And also some concerns about green space. And I'd like to talk about that for a minute. You know, we've been challenged, obviously, as most municipalities have in Ontario, by the Emerald Ash Borer, wiping out a good chunk of our native tree stock. And in talking with people all over the city, not just the ward, one of the things that people really value is the ability to have green spaces close to their home and trees in front to cool their properties and just for general beautification purposes. I think we need to be very careful when we're building too many units on too small a space that, that we are making sure that we are including all the features that everyone else has come to expect in less dense areas, and making that a crucial part of their experience. So we need to take residents' concerns very seriously about this. All of these things have been expressed, and I'd like to make sure that as councillor that we are incorporating that in the final decision on that project. Thank you.
Thank you, Darcy. 2121 Brant Street, the Havendale project. Your opinions, Rory.
Thanks, Mark. Yes, National Homes, they came with a proposal for initially about 220 townhouses. It's been revised to around 200, so that's the situation now. And it'll be up to the next council to determine whether that's appropriate for that area. And you know, I think the current proposal is still too dense. I'm worried about the traffic on Brant Street, safety on the streets and surrounding neighborhoods. I mean, let's be real, they have a right to put something there, right? We just want them to go with the, you know, to follow the rules and not ask for 11 or 12 amendments or changes to those rules in order to get it through. I don't think that's asking too much. I want to see a less dense application with more than a small pocket park, which is what they're proposing right now. I've been to a lot of those meetings on this project, and I have a sense that if this is an opportunity for us to really work out a solution that can work for everyone. Talking to Ed Dorr, who's chair of the Havendale committee, about it. He thinks a solution can be found, we're just not there yet. So let's get to that point. And by the way, the city hall goofed, and they crossed the 180-day deadline, which triggered an automatic, to respond, which triggered an automatic right for National Homes to appeal whatever ends up going through. Oops, that's a goof that I would not let happen if I was on city council. By the way, just as a small aside, probably time I disagree with Darcy about something. There are other developments throughout the city that will affect our ward. I'm talking about downtown.
And thank you, Rory. Peter.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful piece of property. If I was on council before, I would have probably taxed the Catholic Church that owned that site something other than agricultural rates that they've been paying for an underutilized site for an extraordinarily long period of time. So now you fast forward to 2018, you get intensification, more density. Had you developed it 20 years ago, it would have been probably more in conformity with the other Havendale properties, nice big lots, that kind of thing. So we've got a challenge here. So what you're doing here is this is a situation where the city has a great chance to demonstrate its ability to to exercise good planning practice, to collaborate with the developer, whoever they are, have a consultation session with the adjoining neighbors to make sure that any adverse impacts are mitigated with some buffer, nice trees. I'm a big promoter for trees. I hope that this site gets, 4 or 5 trees per unit, for example. But definitely major issues with access onto Brant Street or just onto Havendale. And then you've got to deal with that paramedic station as well, right? Because there's some conflict there potentially with the new units and that kind of thing. So it's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds. I think everybody should take a positive attitude towards it and do something really special. And it's going to be fantastic because now you've got a site with new housing on a bus route, and you've got a share of infrastructure that's already in place. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Thank you, Peter. Gareth?
Yeah, Peter kind of stole my last point there. This is a site that's, like Peter said, directly on a major transit route. And I think if you're thinking of sites within the city where people can get by without a car, it's within a few kilometers of the GO station, and that's an accessible site. And to me, it makes sense to have some level of density there. Obviously, we need to take the considerations of the neighbors into account. There's still plenty of opportunities for the local residents to have their say. This process won't be heard before council for some time still. But I think it ties back to the big issue that I haven't really got a chance to talk about yet, is young people in our community are leaving Burlington at a rate that I've seen personally over the years because they can't afford housing here. We don't have the types of housing that are affordable to young people, and they're being forced to our neighboring communities to the south and west. And land isn't getting any cheaper. The dream of the single family home on the big lot in Burlington is not a reality for young people in our community. And like I said, I've seen it myself. My volunteer work with the city, we've recruited a number of really great young individuals who were gung-ho to start making a difference at the city, and maybe they stayed on board for a year or two, and then they left for affordable housing, basically. So I think this is an opportunity to have some homes that maybe some younger people and young families in particular can afford, and there's maybe a few other sites like that in the city. So I'm not against the idea. I just want to make sure it's done right, and we need to think about keeping young families and families in general together here in the community.
Thank you, Gareth. Lisa?
So I went to the meeting that was held at Brant Hills Community Center, and I had a few questions for the developers that were there at the time. One of the questions that I asked was why there was no stoplight going to be placed on the new street that is coming out of that survey. Considering that they want to attract young families, and I would assume that the young families are going to be sending their kids to the school across the street, it only makes sense that there would be a stoplight there. Their response was they can walk up to Havendale and cross there. I don't know, I'm a parent. Have you ever had your kids that they're going to take the long way around? They're going to walk up, or are they going to try and go against traffic off their own street to cross? Okay? They were told, this is the developers told me, that they were denied the stoplight by city. I don't know what city would think that that was a good idea. That's something to be looked into. The other thing I asked the developers at that meeting, and also another development meeting I had for St. Stephen's, was where is the low-cost housing? Where is the affordable housing? The developer said to me, for the St. Stephen's property, it is mandated by the province, we don't have to do it. This should be mandated by council. Council has the power. We're supposed to be running this city. We should be telling these developers, you're going to include low-cost housing. This shouldn't be a question. This is supposed to be a city that envelopes everybody. Low-cost, high-class, whatever you want. But we're not doing it. City is not pulling up their own britches and saying, you know what, developers? We want low-cost housing here. We want to keep our kids here. Don't tell us that it's the province that mandates. The council mandates what happens in Burlington. The city planners should be taking direction from the council, not the council taking direction from the city planners.
Okay, this question is going to Rory, and I've also been asked to challenge you on your particular answers. So I think I'm going to do that in the next, in this section, and we'll give you 1 minute to respond to my follow-up question, okay? A little more interesting when we do it that way. Okay, Rory, what plans do you have to address the long wait times for subsidized housing and also to tackle poverty in Burlington?
So we have an issue here in Burlington. We have a poverty issue. We've got 13,000 Burlington residents living in poverty right now. You know, we learned this at a poverty forum recently. A couple others here were there as well. Median income of around $22,000 for newcomers to Burlington, $22,000. That's about half of what it is in the city. The most scary stat to me was that more than a quarter of female seniors have an income of less than $20,000, whereas for men it's 12%. So the task at hand is to make a Burlington that works for everyone and reduce or eliminate the poverty in our city. As far as affordable housing goes, the primary goal must be to increase the supply of rent-geared-to-income housing. We have to break the myth that's out there that there isn't poverty in Halton, and we have to get more funding to lower the wait list. You know, we can also support Habitat for Humanity in building some more of those modest homes that they do that we could really use. And you know, ensure that the Halton region supports official plans that bring more affordable housing rather than these unwanted condos. You know, one issue, you know, I talk about affordable housing in the Havendale development. They're going to sell those for $700K. They're going to be more expensive than anything in Mountainside and half of Brant Hills. So I'm not sure that that's the kind of affordable housing that we're looking for. I couldn't afford it. I think that's really, yeah, I think those are the main points.
Okay, Rory, just to follow up on that, you did some statistical information, but you didn't really address how you're going to tackle the poverty in Burlington, or how you're going to help ease that poverty. And when you talk about the subsidized housing, are you willing to increase the regional budget to do that?
Absolutely. You know what? We need it. Wait times are way too long, Mark. We can't. We can afford it. Halton Region has done a great job of keeping those 0% gains all this time. Congratulations to Gary Carr for doing so. How about we have a few needs that might actually deserve a little 1% blip, like getting people into homes they can actually afford and keeping lower income people in Burlington. So yes, that's a big part of it.
Okay, thank you. Peter.
So we live in one of the richest regions in the country. There's a lot of money here, but in Ward 3 there's poverty. Pardon me? Sorry, I thought somebody was engaged. There's poverty in Ward 3. I met a couple of women the other day and they can't put food on the table after they pay for rent. The feds don't have any money. The province has less than no money. We have to take control of it ourselves. So I have a plan. That's my #1 priority is housing, and it's not just it's housing. Nobody can afford a house in Burlington, whether you're in the open market or the closed market. So I'm just going to burn through this real quick. I would like to be the lead on what I call the Burlington Housing Initiative, and then transfer it off to somebody else depending on how it goes. But basically, conduct a thorough assessment of the state of the housing in city and the region, make that information transparent and public, Is it a 5-year waiting list, 10-year waiting list? What is it? How many people are affected? How much absorption do we need to satisfy every year to get this thing fixed? You should be able to get online and find an apartment or a place to live within 3 months, not 3 years. Cut the red tape. All municipal site planning development approvals must be expedited. I was involved in a 58-unit housing project, and we did it real fast, beautiful. We engaged the people. They were happy. You have to work collaborative and in amicable fashion with developers. I do that all the time. We can generate what people are talking about at the table. Utilize city-owned lands for housing. That doesn't mean you give up the fee simple interest, but do like land leasing. I've got an idea, maybe instead of having an 18-hole golf course, we have a 9-hole golf course. Put a nice seniors home in a beautiful green area setting instead of an industrial street. Carve out small acreages out of large city parks. Like say for example, Maple Park. Where that garden is there, you could probably have 2 or 3 acres. You could probably put in 300-400 units. Strategic property acquisition so that you cut off the developer's leverage. You leverage the developer.
Okay, thank you, Peter. So you have identified how you're going to look at this problem. What are you specifically going to do to address the problem?
Well, you first have to assess it.
Oh, so it hasn't been assessed? Hasn't been assessed?
You show me where show me the site where the assessment is. I'll do the assessment and I'll give it to you in 30 days. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. Okay? I'm going to allocate the first year's salary of $100,000 of councillor to the initiative. So October 23rd, that money starts going into the pot. And we're going to use it, and we're going to take a hold of this housing problem because it affects everybody. It affects health, mental health issues, people's confidence, people's success. We're losing kids. The seniors are having a hell of a time living here. And if you fill and increase the housing stock, it makes everything else go away. Intensification gets better, the transit gets better, everybody's more happy, higher quality of life, and it's good for everybody.
Okay, we could go on for...
people in Burlington and living in poverty, but I think even more significant than that, that's a huge number, but 3,400 of those are children. And obviously we need to take some concrete action. I think the Halton Comprehensive Region Housing Strategy, if you haven't seen it, it's due for an update, but it covers a lot. We need to go further than that. The province changed legislation last year to allow inclusionary zoning to be used in the province, or sorry, as a tool by municipalities. I think that's something we need to start looking at. Basically what that is, if you're not familiar, is forcing developers, as I've heard mentioned, to include a certain percentage of affordable units in new developments. Other things related to poverty, obviously having local jobs and employment. So anything we can do to help our business community, whether that's increasing the amount of skilled training available for folks so that they can find opportunities here in the community and that those are available to them. And again, our transit system. If people can't get back and forth to work affordably and efficiently, then they're going to continue to face problems in terms of keeping employment, and it's a problem for businesses as well. I've heard of it a lot when I talk to the business community. And seniors, finally, I'll say that what we need to do for seniors is increase maybe some opportunities for seniors, affordable living, repurposing surplus buildings within our communities like schools and churches that are no longer in use. There's a great opportunity for affordable living for seniors, and we want seniors to stay in the communities that they know. We don't want to force them to move to other parts of the city in order to live affordably.
Okay, so doing all this, Gareth, is going to take some dollars. So where are you going to carve out that section of the budget to get those dollars to be able to implement those ideas?
Well, I don't think the inclusionary zoning will really cost us anything. That's just a political will. We have to say we're going to, require developers to do that. And I think if you want opportunities to build developments here in Burlington, you're going to have to get on board with that. No doubt that transit has costs in providing that system. I mentioned before electrifying our transit vehicles and right-sizing them so that we reduce the operating costs. And I'd say within 10 years, we're going to be looking at autonomous vehicles. That's a huge portion of the cost of transit. So this is the driver. So once we've got our costs down on that side, I think we can recover those funds from that side of things and be a little more efficient with it and dedicate that to affordable housing.
Okay, thank you. Lisa, do you want me to read the question?
No, I'm good, thanks. Again, we need to, as a council, mandate to the developers that affordable and low-cost housing is going to be part of the deal to get development in Burlington. The other one is we need to sit down with the province and get some funding. I don't think that the new government is as scary as it's being portrayed. One person maybe, but we need outside funding. The province is where we should go. The other thing is, you're going to ask me how we're going to do this. Our taxes are high, and we are spending. There's lots of ways that Burlington can save. One of them is utilizing micropave versus shave and pave. It saves 30% of the cost. Life cycle extension of our fleet of vehicles by 1 year. Adding a year to the life of capital projects. Just there alone, we're going to save millions by just putting off by 1 year. Instead of having all our city workers riding around in F-150s, we're going to, and they're not getting a new one, they're going to have to keep that one for 2 more years. These are expenses that we can rein in now and use them for better for our seniors and for families who cannot afford what we are selling in Burlington right now. As far as the seniors are concerned, we want to keep them in their homes. What I'm hearing at the door is there doesn't seem to be any system in place in Burlington where they can go or get help. My idea is to, through the local high schools, get the volunteers, a registry going for City Hall and through the high schools. The students need volunteer hours to graduate. Seniors need help on the outside of their houses and on the inside of their houses. Why can't the students work with the seniors?
And we thank you, Lisa, for that. And just a follow-up. It concerns me when you say you're going to mandate developers.
Yes.
Do you really think you can?
Yes.
And what is the price of an affordable home in Burlington? Everybody throws around the term affordable housing, but no one has identified what affordable housing is in terms of dollars. So,
well, I'm not even talking about affordable housing, but we're going for subsidized housing that I would assume that the city would be on the cost for. Now, the savings to the taxes and the shave and pave and all that, then we'd have the money for it. So I'm more concerned with subsidized housing than low-cost housing. But as far as that's concerned, the developers have to listen to us. We're the ones that are going to be signing off on this.
It's their land.
Yeah, but we're going to be giving the zoning.
Okay, fair enough. Darcy, do you want me to read the question?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you. Most of what everyone has said is hard to dispute. I mean, we clearly have a problem in our region, not just our city. We want to make sure that those who have been on wait lists for some time are taken care of as quickly as possible. I think that there's really about 4 things that we can do as a community and as a government in order to start alleviating the pressure on the wait lists and some of the pressure of people in their daily lives in having challenges with their income in our community. The first, obviously, we need to increase the supply of subsidized housing. Inclusionary zoning has been mentioned. I think it's a good concept. It's a tool that we are allowed to use, and it's something that we should definitely consider doing, especially in creating units that are a lot more units that are geared to income. I think that that is definitely a big help. We also are in the middle of our 10-year plan, our housing strategy for Halton. There's over $100 million committed to that strategy. The strategy is a very good one, but once you get in the middle of any plan that lasts 10 years, you need to do a rethink because conditions on the ground have changed. So I would definitely consider looking at increased funding at the regional level there. And we need to improve our support for organizations that support the poor. Habitat for Humanity has been frustrated by over-regulation, lots of red tape, and it's frustrated their ability to build projects that would be able to be, people could move into straight away. So we need to cut that regulation and cut that red tape and expedite the approvals process for projects such as those.
Thank you. Again, Darcy, I understand what you're saying, but where are these dollars going to come from? I mean, our taxes already went up 4.3% last year. So where are these, in Burlington, so where are these dollars going to come from to implement those ideas that you have?
Well, I'm going to tell you, any business that's increasing their expenses by over 4% a year for a plan 6 years in a row, when the revenues don't support it, has got a spending problem. And we have a spending problem in this city. And the way we budget basically guarantees that we take last year's expenditure and we add inflation to it, and then add on a whole bunch of add-ons. We need to stop what we're doing, take a look at how our budget is actually crafted at a line-by-line level, and start rooting out some of the inefficiencies that we have in our system, because that's something that we have not been doing systematically. And I can tell you from my business experience, and having run a multi-million-dollar budget process, several of them, that as soon as you put people's feet to the fire, suddenly the dollars appear. And I would absolutely support that process because it would lower the cost of taxes for everyone, and we can reinvest the savings in services such as this.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, we'll move back to Peter as the first one to answer this question from the audience. What, in your opinion, should there be term limits for city council and mayor?
Yes.
Now you've got a minute to answer.
No,
so what would that limit be?
Good question. I think that I like the two-term limit idea. I think if you've got somebody that can enter into the council seat that doesn't have a long learning curve about all these different elements of running a city, then they can be relatively effective for the first 4 years, continue on and then pass the torch on through the second term. Maybe use that idea that it's a guaranteed you have to exit so that maybe you can nurture new blood to come in. And that may help the political process as well, maybe more engagement, less disillusionment. And it is difficult at the local level because the incumbents always have that popular edge to an election. And in a municipality with a 20% or 30% participation rate for elections, I don't know, I think they would just be more attractive and more powerful. And then you bring in fresh ideas and you keep the council stronger that way, I think. So I got 30 seconds to tell you that 8 years.
Oh, I wish I could. Just one more follow-up. But I won't do that because that wouldn't be fair. I don't care whether we got time. It's still not fair. Gareth.
Okay, that's a really interesting question. Councillor Taylor is here this evening, and you know, he's been our councillor for 30 years and has done a wonderful job. I'd like to thank him. We haven't had the chance yet. This is a tough question for me. my neighbor is a big supporter of term limits, and I can see pros and cons to it. What I really think would be more effective, I'm a supporter of moving to a ranked ballot system, where voters have a better say over, the first past the post system has a lot of problems, not just municipally, at multiple levels of government, and you end up, when there's an incumbent who doesn't get more than 50% of the vote, they can still win because the opposition is just so divided. So I think ranked ballot is the future for municipal government. The City of London is trying it this year. And I think that would give voters more control over, if there's a representative that isn't effective, they've got an opportunity to, make them their last choice on the ballot, and they have a less shot of getting back in. Right now, incumbents have a huge advantage, and I think it would level the playing field a bit and make a fairer democracy. So I don't specifically support term limits, to answer the question. I think we can do it through other means.
Okay. Years ago, we did have a question on the ballot about ranked balloting, and it was
at the municipal level, at the provincial level. That wasn't ranked ballot,
and they soundly defeated it.
That wasn't ranked ballot. Actually, it was
a
different system, but we can talk about that more if you like.
But that's okay. But you're talking another system rather than term limits.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay, fair enough. Lisa?
The answer is yes, and I have campaigned on that. I believe that 3 terms is plenty enough. First term, you're getting in there and you're getting your feet wet, cleaning up the mess midway through. And then I think your second term, you're getting your own ideas across, getting them through, and then your third term is seeing your ideas that you put into place be fulfilled. So yes, I do, 3-term limit.
Okay, Lisa, how about someone who gives up their job, because this is a full-time job, gives up their job to be a councillor, and you're going to toss them out after 12 years.
But you know this when you're going in. And this
so it's okay then to give up your job and run for council, even though you know it's going to be just 12 years?
Well, if you're running for council, I would assume that you have the passion and the fire to do this and that you love your city. So I don't understand why 3 terms. 3 terms is a very long time to get your ideas across. And I think anything beyond that, you're just sitting in a chair.
And we could go on and on, but I'll move down the line. Darcy?
I would say the answer is no, and I think a great example of that is our current regional chair is doing what I think has been from day one, been doing a really great job managing our region. So to arbitrarily set a date on his departure, for example, I think, given his performance, would be unfortunate. But the one thing we need to do, actually several things we need to do here. The first thing is we need to remove as many of the advantages that the incumbent has prior to campaigning. So, not being able to put out election signs, for example, until September is a problem. It really hampers name recognition, I think, in a lot of cases, and I think that's something that should be removed. And also, campaigning in an election year before you're allowed to campaign and using city resources to do it should automatically disqualify you from running. That to me is just really sort of a contempt for the process. And shows perhaps, that those are the type of people that we need to make sure we're limiting. And you have the power to do that. So just make sure you vote for someone else at the ballot box. And I would say also as well, I think that by showing up to forums like this, by questioning your candidates at the door, you are making sure that the people that you do select for the job are actually capable of doing it. and you're able to hold them properly to account. And I think more than anything, in our modern society, with all of our means of communication, I think that is probably the biggest limiter on people getting in year after year after year that you may not necessarily want. Thank you.
Okay, Darcy, with 70% of the people not voting in municipal elections, and that's what it is, folks. Whether you like it or not, that's approximately what people that come out and vote are, about 30%. Don't you have to mandate specific terms for council so that it doesn't just go on and on and on with the same council?
I hear what you're saying, and I think it's really troubling too that more people don't choose to be engaged. I would rather see that we actively engage people, and council doesn't necessarily have to take the lead on that. I think that a lot of community groups have done a very good job of late holding people to the fire and making sure that they survive the experience. So, you know, you look at federal government, for example, the last election was over 60%. And yet there's no term limits there. So I don't think that that necessarily means that because there are term limits that's why participation is lower. But I do think we need to talk to the community about ways that could reasonably engage citizens more regularly, make them feel part of the process, and therefore actually want to come out to vote on election day.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll go to Rory.
Thanks, Mark. You know, one thing I've seen through my work on democratic issues is internationally, the #1 issue with where democracies stumble is when leaders don't leave when they're supposed to. We have really a strong democracy in Canada, but there are weaknesses. We've seen some of that recently. So let's strengthen democracy by having term limits, absolutely. Community consultation to determine the number. And by the way, you can have someone leave the role and they're free to contest it in 4 years. If people decide they're not satisfied with whoever comes up, they can run again. That's how I would like to see it play out. Also, you know, there are a lot of capable people in our ward. Look, 5 people here, all capable of running. It's proof positive that if you have term limits, good people will come aboard, and you know, I'm sure it's 100% voter turnout in this room. So, you know, the right decisions will be made. 40 seconds left. Here's the other issue with democracy in Burlington. We don't have enough councillors. The city's growing. The way it is now, it's very challenging for any city councillor to do a good job for people, to handle all of the day-to-day issues while thinking about the growth of the city, its position within the province and the region, sitting on the regional council at the same time, understanding the context there, all at the same time while making sure that the snow gets plowed and the roads are maintained, and helping people with their individual issues. I think we could go a long way in Burlington by adding more councillors.
Thank you. You're saying there should be term limits, so you'd be willing to circumvent democracy for the sake of term limits?
Could you clarify the question?
Oh, democracy.
How would I be circumventing democracy?
Is anybody can run. Here we've got 5 tonight. Anybody can run, and anybody has a right to run at any time.
I don't think it's really that straightforward, Mark. For example, people under 18 cannot run.
Why is that?
I wonder. I have a volunteer on my team who's 15 who is extremely engaged and would be a great voter. But I think that it can be. Democracy is not a black and white project. run by simple rules. Maybe that's how we're taught sometimes in high school, but the truth is building a strong, resilient democracy requires difficult decisions just like this.
Okay, thank you. And we'll go to Gareth to respond to this question. Do you support the quarry expansion in North Aldershot, where under the current plan an established 9,000 trees will be cut down and shale extraction would occur 35 meters from residential homes?
Thank you, that's an excellent question. So just for the information of the audience, I've been to every public meeting that's been held on this subject for over a year now. There's been a number of meetings organized by residents groups as well as the quarry operators, and I've gone to both with open ears to hear what the issues are. I don't support it going ahead based on the concerns that have been raised, not only about trees, but about air quality for local residents. This is a permit that's over 40 years old that has been issued, and I think it's a major concern for residents across the city, not just within Tyandaga. The problem is that ultimately the decision for this type of aggregate extraction license resides with the province. So we're in a difficult position where we now have a new provincial government. I don't know that they're more willing to do anything about it than the previous provincial government. That's a discussion for another day. But I think the city should be more vocal as advocates for residents on this particular issue. I would like to see the city put pressure on the province to allow third-party independent studies on things like air quality and endangered species to go forward so that we can put the pressure on the province appropriately and have the data in front of us, because I think it's been a little one-sided to date. So that's my answer.
Gareth, it may be 40 years old, but it's still legal.
That's right, until the province says otherwise. So that's the pickle we're in.
So how would you, as a member of council, actually intervene in something that is really not your purview?
Well, I think the most we can do is, like I said, be a voice of the residents and advocate on behalf of them with the province and raise those issues, ask for the independent studies to go ahead. And more than that, other than people tying themselves to trees, there's not a lot that as council members or as residents that we can do, unfortunately. And it's really too bad. I think that it would be better if the city could do more.
Thank you, Gareth. Lisa, same question.
Well, Gareth is right in everything he has said. Our hands are pretty much tied by a 40-year-old agreement, which I do not agree with. They have the law behind them. I do not agree with the expansion. Again, we need to sit down with the province and have a liaison between the city and the province for issues such as these. We should not be scared to go to the province and renegotiate and say, listen, this is our city. We need you guys to help us. This is a 40-year-old problem. We weren't even around when the city wasn't this big when this was signed. So can you please do more surveys on it, reassess it, and work with us to stop the expansion.
Okay. Oakville, for example, intervened when there was a gas plant planned for Oakville. It wasn't the responsibility of the municipal government, and they actually got it. Well, we all know what happened there. But it was at the impetus of the municipal government that they got that out of the way of having to deal with it in Oakville. So I guess I'm looking for something a little more specific other than just support. What can you do?
Well, what is the city that we have they done so far? It's not in the forefront. Why is it not in the forefront? Because the councillors have chosen it not to be. If they were behind it, they would help the committee, the group that's against it, put it more into the papers and publicity, and again, with the province. But it's on back burner, like most residents don't know about it. Put it out there.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Darcy, do you want the question read again?
No, thank you. This is a really unique situation, and certainly if we were presented with this situation brand new today, we wouldn't be even talking about this. It would probably be a complete non-starter. Having said that, this company is a major employer in the city. They've been a very good corporate citizen. This is a very emotional issue. I can completely understand the feelings of residents who back onto this development. The challenge is that because they are legally permitted to do it, and that they have really tried to go out of their way to make sure that every possible study has been done, and done multiple times, having read their website rather in depth on the issue, that I think our role as a city is to make sure that they continue to live up to their public commitments in working with residents to minimize the impact on their homes, and that the city ensures that that if anything does start to slip outside the bounds of what's acceptable, according to the regulations, that we immediately step in and back residents' concerns, and then go forward from there.
Okay, thank you. Darcy? Just to follow up, you say that it's the province's issue. Well, we've got a CN hub, the region's getting involved in that, and Air Park, which the municipality intervened in finally. It's okay, John. So I'm just wondering, but I don't hear anything about this issue on this quarry that's in North Aldershot.
Well, you make a good point by bringing up those other examples. I think the difference is that, in fact, those people who were responsible for, let's say, the Air Park, for example, were in direct violation of our site alteration policy. And so there wasn't any particular policy that was already in place that had permitted them to make the changes that they did. So I think that we're comparing apples and oranges here in this case. This does seem to be a very exceptional case, and again, it's unfortunate that decisions of many years ago are impacting us today. But perhaps it's a cautionary tale as well about some of the decisions that Council is making on our behalf right now that are going to be affecting us for 40 years into our future. So we need to make sure that we consult properly and make these decisions appropriately and according to the concerns of residents in our ward.
Thank you. Do I like the project? Of course not. This is a tough pill to swallow, absolutely. You gotta feel for residents here. Burlington has a history of fighting quarry expansions. Thanks to John Taylor and residents in Burlington in fighting another quarry expansion on our escarpment. So there's a precedent, and I think that's one reason why residents have spring in their step in fighting this. I'm not sure that we should be expecting laws on the books to change to suit what we may think is best for Burlington. We have to respect the laws of the land. And if within those laws and within the surveys taking place under those laws that the quarry were to be found to be outside, a quarry expansion outside of what is legal, then of course that's the law we apply. But you know what, it's a 40-year-old agreement. There are a lot of owners of houses in Brant Hills and Mountainside who've been there for 40 years. They have 40-year-old agreements for their property too. So property rights are a tricky thing. I think we need to be really careful, and if the project ends up going forward, the city can play a major role in mitigating the effects of this. It is going to be difficult, and let's start looking at that as if the quarry meets final approval.
Those mitigations are really not the City of Burlington's responsibility. I mean, if you've got air quality, that's not the City of Burlington. If you've got the traffic and so on, I mean, the City of Burlington can't stop that. So did the council of the day make an error in allowing residential homes to be built within 35 meters of a potential quarry?
Yeah, I think so, Mark. I do think they made an error in putting something so close to a quarry. I obviously, not having been there, not having been born yet, I can't say how that negotiation went down, but it is an outcome, as Darcy said, where it shows how consequences of decisions it can come home to roost 40 years later. Yeah. And by the way, the city, fair point in some cases, but it's a great opportunity for the city to advocate on behalf of its constituents, to do that kind of mitigation that's going to be absolutely required, help them navigate the system, and put those pressure points down.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Peter. Oh, and Mark. It's been a long time, hasn't it? Do you support the quarry expansion in North Aldershot, where, under the current plan, an estimated 9,000 trees will be cut down and shale extraction would occur within 35 meters from residential homes?
Yes, I do. That property reminds me, I used to take my kids in the back of my Jeep and we'd rip around and trespass on that quarry site. Here's how I compare the quarry to something else I'm involved with, which is railway corridor expansions. And so railway lines were built 100 years ago, for example, and then people were moving into houses and new subdivisions, and then now you fast forward and the railways are going from 2 tracks to 4 tracks, and the people are going, well, what's going on? What are you going to do? And it's the same sort of conflicting relationship between adjoining land uses. So I think this quarry operator is a good corporate citizen. From what I understand, they've been bending over backwards to be good to the community. Maybe errors were made with city planning and development and the build. I think Brandhaven Homes built all those homes back then. As a buyer, you know what you should know when you're buying $1 million plus home that you're backing onto a quarry. What does that mean? Investigate it. It's that buyer beware stuff. The real estate agent should have advised the buyers. The lawyers should have advised the buyers. I understand that Untitled, there's something registered as a notice. I'm not sure for certain, but there should be. So the tree cutting issue, I think that if you go and consult as a municipality, a council, representing the concerned citizens and say, look, you're doing this, yeah, we don't have any rights, it's a provincial thing, you're cutting down 9,000 trees. How about you say, plant 18,000, 2-to-1 replacement. Give us some times where the air needs to be scrubbed or windy days. I think they have all those measures in place, but it's a huge employment issue for us. Let's keep the jobs. It's a natural resource. Where else are you going to get the clay? It's all these economical conditions. I think that everybody should just be happy and work together.
Thank you. Peter?
Thank you.
It's my understanding that there is something registered on title for homeowners. So it's really their problem, and really it should have nothing to do with you and council, correct?
No, it's not that, nothing to do with council. I think that people look to council for some confidence and some care and understanding. I think when it comes to property rights and conflicting land uses, a lot of people aren't familiar with that. So I think that if you provide some sort of education, some background, the pros and cons, and demonstrate that, you know, the quarry's there, it's a natural resource. I don't know what the arguments are, but I think if you go and be transparent about the facts of the matter and the chronology of the events, and everybody has a responsibility for their actions. I bought the house. I have a responsibility. I'm a quarry operator. I have a responsibility. I'm a council. I have a responsibility. So everybody, there's a shared sort of relationship of responsibility with all the multi-parties that are impacted by it. So I think council should be going out, but being very open and honest with everybody that's impacted. And then I think that I think you'd be surprised how good corporate citizens benefit the city.
You've been very respectful, and I want to respect our audience's time. So on this one, we'll just give them a minute, and that should take us right up to the time at 9 o'clock.
I think we have closing statements ready, Mark. Actually.
Do you?
Yeah. I'd love to read it.
Okay. How long did they say?
They gave us 2 minutes, Mark.
2 minutes?
Yeah.
Well, then let's go right to that, and we won't get into
we'll try to make it quick.
The residential tree bylaw. See? Okay, it's important, so we'll go over 9 o'clock a little bit. Just a 1 minute response, there'll be no follow-up from me. Will you vote in favor of a residential tree bylaw? And we'll start with Lisa.
Absolutely. I live on Princeton, and one of the reasons that we bought there, it was just around the corner from where I grew up, but also the oak trees. We had a neighbor around the corner who cut down a beautiful, healthy oak tree, and it was just appalling. So yes, I do agree that we should have a bylaw.
Thank you.
No, I do not. I think that there is universal acceptance in this room of the value of our trees to our society, and that we would want to do as much as we reasonably could to expand and grow it. However, we're now talking about a solution that perhaps doesn't really address the problem. And I'll elaborate a little bit here in the time I have. We did studies back in 2012 that indicated that there was absolutely minimal to no issue with residents chopping down trees on their property. And in fact, you know, when we start talking about private property rights, my opinion is that we need to be very mindful of that before we impose a blanket bylaw that will impose tremendous costs on families and other people in our community who can't afford it. Thank you.
My answer is the same as Darcy's, except I would put a yes at the front of it. I think we do have to be extremely careful with homeowners' rights here, and a public consultation will be very important. I think that we could come through with that with a tree planting bylaw that still respects homeowners' rights, but can at least prevent the most sort of egregious cutting down of trees. So that's what I would like to see. And by the way, I would also like to see these, you know, us boosting the amount of funding to get the trees planted faster that we're losing due to the emerald ash borer.
I support a pragmatic tree bylaw, one that makes sense. It's not punitive. I'm dealing with some projects now in Toronto where if you cut down a tree, or we're cutting down trees, and the bylaw says you got to replace 3 for 1 that you cut down. That's a different story. But don't tell me that I can't, or you know, cut down a tree on my property. But if I do, for whatever reason, I got to put a pool in, or the tree's ugly, or it's messy, or whatever. I think that I have a duty to replace that tree. It's important. Trees are important for a lot of reasons. And whether it goes back onto my property, so if I cut the tree and I don't want it back on my property, then the tree goes onto somebody else who wants that tree. Just things like that. So I think that you can have a very, very good time with this. And also, more importantly, is to force all new developments to over-tree the sites. I can't stand what I see in the new developments. So I'm all for trees.
Yes, I do support a private tree bylaw. I agree that it has to be done carefully as to not infringe too much upon people's rights or cost them too much to remove a tree when they need to or when there's a valid reason. It should be a process that the residents can follow. I was there at council for both the discussion back in 2012 and I believe it was discussed again in this term of council, and it's just gone through for a pilot area in Roseland. So there's lots happening on this file. I've spoken to experts in the tree maintenance community who opposed it previously, who are now saying, due to the issues that we've had with emerald ash borer in particular, it may be time to reconsider it. I thought a reasonable measure back when it was first discussed at council was to have a system just to account for, well, how many trees we're losing, where there's no punitive or penalty applied, but in order to remove a tree, you need to register or make the city aware, and at least then we'd know what the scale of the problem is.
Thank you. Have 2 minutes for each of the candidates to wrap up.
Well, thanks again, Mark and Gary and ECO for having us, and really for the people, thanks for hanging in there for over 2 hours, 3 hours, some of you. It's amazing. I just have a few things to say. I'm worried about Branch Street and Guelph Line going from 4 lanes to 6 lanes. I think that's a massive hit against the character and nature of the city. Lobby your next councillor in Ward 3 and council to stop that. I think that's really important. Secondly, please be careful about the information that's out there about facts or non-facts or the spins and about intensification, the official plan. Just be careful. Don't get led down a certain path which may not necessarily be absolutely correct. There's dynamics within that whole process that can come back and be an ironic, aggressive, sort of more intensification result. You don't want that. You want to keep it where it is or go less. Manage it. Have your councillors be more proactive, managing the official plan and development in the city. And go on my website. I've got this housing initiative. It's not just about affordable housing. It's kind of an interesting take on it. I'm just starting to think it through, but I'm also applying the $100,000 councillor salary for the first year directly to it, effective the day after the election, if elected. And also, please consider my background and expertise as being an asset to sitting at council. I think I'd help the cause out quite a bit. And thanks again for listening to me.
Good. Okay. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending tonight. I believe you've heard enough from myself and my fellow candidates to realize that there's some fairly stark differences between us on a number of issues. I'd like to once again acknowledge that this is the first election in 30 years that won't feature John Taylor's name on the ballot in Ward 3. John's been the councillor my entire 16 years I've lived in Ward 3 now, and I've come to appreciate the leadership that he's provided and the advice that I've received from him personally during my time at City Hall, serving on the Sustainable Development Committee. It's been invaluable. And it's going to be difficult to imagine City Hall without John. I know he's looking forward to remaining involved in the community in different ways. As voters, the choice is yours. I believe your choice with me is the same style of practical, thoughtful leadership provided by Councillor Taylor for the past 30 years. The challenge for your next councillor will be to look beyond Burlington's current challenges and think about what the city will look like for future generations. I bring the benefit of a fresh perspective, but also the necessary municipal experience to start working for you on day one. As I mentioned, I don't think going back to the drawing board and our official plan is an option we should pursue. We should address the missing components, such as the transportation plan, to keep Burlington moving now and in the future. But let's not let that stand in the way of providing for opportunities for our children and future next generation of Burlingtonians. I invite you to read my full platform on my website at garethward3.ca, and most importantly, please get out and vote on October 22nd. Thank you.
So once again, I'd like to thank everyone for coming out. I know it's been a long 2 hours, at least for me. It is very nerve-wracking up here. I'd like to thank the ECOB for holding the events across the city. Again, like I said, it's been astounding. It would be an honor and privilege for me to represent you as councillor for Ward 3. I believe we have some unique issues in Ward 3. A lot of our citizens in Ward 3 are seniors. I've knocked on doors where they don't have computers. They don't have the help they need to stay in their homes. I believe this is an important subject that we need to address. I believe that through the schools we can take this to a different level for volunteers. The other thing, the low-cost housing, I've had a meeting with HAND, which is for autism and housing for handicapped. We're not even addressing this in the city to its full potential. We have families out there that do not know what they're going to do with their children that have autism when they're gone. This is something that has to be addressed through subsidized housing and low-cost housing. We have touched on a few issues. There are many more facing the new council. If you have any further questions, you can talk to me out there, or you can check out my website. It is electlisacooper.com. I will see you at your door. I'm on the second round around the neighborhoods. So thank you for coming out.
Thank you, Mark, for your time today. That's my wording. Let's try it again. Thanks, Mark, for your time today, and thanks to you for showing up here and taking the time to listen and to submit your questions to us, and hopefully talk with some of you after. And finally, a big thank you to ECOB, who has done what I think is a really stellar job in organizing these debates. There are more debates to come, and hopefully in years to come, we will have this opportunity as well. As a parent and as a neighbor, I've noticed that a lot of the concerns that you have are similar to those everywhere in the ward. Whether you're from the rural parts of the ward, up in near Dairy Road, all the way down to Industrial Road at the south end of our ward, the concerns are the same. In large part, you're concerned about feeling part of the decision-making process that's going on, and that you haven't been, and that you really want to. And so part of my job as your next city councillor is to make sure that you really are actively engaged and informed on the issues that matter most to you. That is very important to me, and I promise you that that will be my top priority. The second issue is as it relates to decision-making processes in general at City Hall. I think we need to make sure that we use mature, responsible thinking in solving our problems. I don't believe that there's any one best solution, but there are many that will work, and I think in talking with the community, we can make sure that we're going to make the solutions work for the majority of you. And finally, I hope I've earned your trust and your vote tonight. This has been just a great experience going to the door and talking to as many of you as possible. And we have 3.5 weeks to convince you to vote one way or the other. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thanks, Mark. First of all, I regret that we didn't have a more opportunity to talk about seniors. So I do have it on my website as well, my platform. So please take a look, rorynissan.ca. Okay, well, you have a tough choice to make on October 22nd. Great candidates, but you know, our city is truly at a crossroads. The question is, who can bring about the best for you and for Burlington? Here's what I can bring to the table, okay? 10 years of public service experience as a Canadian diplomat. So that means I know how government works, and I know how it doesn't work. And, you know, I think I think I've proven myself by working 14-hour days, helping Canadians in the middle of emergencies internationally, going to places like Libya and Honduras and the UN and NATO, looking to negotiate what was best for Canadians. I have that skill set, and I want to bring that for Ward 3. You know, I think my community activity here at home also benefits. Like when I co-founded and chaired the One Burlington Festival for the past 2 years. My commitment to our city is solid. My promise to you is that I will bring my skills and hard work to the City Council table to get you what you deserve. And I'm talking about keeping the traffic from getting out of control and ensuring the safe streets, not wasting your tax dollars, letting farmers farm, protecting the escarpment, fostering respect at City Hall, supporting our seniors, including with free public transit in the middle of weekdays, putting a splash pad into Brant Hills, building up our community, including with better programming, and delivering public transit that actually works, and better parking downtown. And finally, and most importantly, protecting our city's downtown from high-rises that do not belong. With your help, we can do that. Thank you.
Thank you. We cut you off. So I do want to thank all of the candidates for respecting one another and respecting the time. I think they did a wonderful job. And just before I turn it over to Gary Scobie, I would like to say from a personal point of view, John, it's interesting that you won't be on the ballot. John was on council when I started, and I can tell you that he is a persuasive individual. He's like a dog with a bone, and he is also the most annoying councillor that I've ever worked with. And I'm sure Kathy agrees with me. So please, a round of applause for Councillor Taylor.
Start the clock, please. On behalf of engaged citizens of Burlington, I want to thank first the Halton District School Board for providing this venue tonight, Mark Carr for excellently moderating this evening, the candidates that participated, the residents who attended, yourselves, and the volunteers and students who helped make this evening a great success. We encourage all residents to vote and to make your voice heard. Thank you and good night.